I still can't believe the Chicago Bears actually fired a head coach in season for the first time in franchise history. Of all the Bears' bad head coaches that we've had to sit through the end of the year, this is the one the McCaskies finally decide enough is enough.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On the show today, we pick up the pieces after a surprise in-season head coaching firing for the first time ever. Matt Eberflus is out. Thomas Brown is interim head coach, and there's still 5 more games to play this season that, hey, those matter still too here. But we'll kind of take stock of just the decision as a whole and what it means and how ownership and the front office got to this point and what makes this situation with Matt Eberflus the one that really put them over the top as opposed to other bad Bears coaches who they've made sit through the rest of the season and made us all watch those coaches flounder when we knew they were dead men walking anyway. And we also need to check in on where this leaves things for general manager Ryan Poles, who stuck by Matt Eberflus less than 12 months ago and now wanted him fired even sooner than the team actually did let go of the head coach. But we talked for weeks about how, yes, we wanted the team to fire Matt Eberflus, but they never fired a head coach in a season before. And while things were going bad this year, they weren't necessarily like the embarrassment of the NFL, right? This was not the worst team in football. Other teams were having a ton of issues. You think about the Cowboys, what's been going on there, the Jets and the dysfunction over there. Even the Giants have had some dysfunction. I mean, there's been some teams, the Panthers as well, that just are more of the laughingstock of the NFL. But a national audience on Thanksgiving and a blunder as big as the one Matt Eberflus made at the end of that game, and all of a sudden it tips the scales for the Bears. But it didn't tip the scales right away. Right? The game is, okay, it's 11 a.m. game, Thanksgiving Day. The embarrassment happens, I don't know what time it was, 2:30 or whatever, 2 o'clock p.m. Central Time. He has a regular post-game press conference. We go through all of Thanksgiving night. No coaching change. You wake up first thing Black Friday morning, no coaching change. Matt Eberflus has a regularly scheduled 9 a.m. press conference that's always done over Zoom. This wasn't a special remote thing, but the way it's done like this, it's over Zoom. I think because it was a road game and it was the day after press conference after a road game is however they structure it. Everything was normal about the post day after a game morning press conference that proceeded as planned. So there was some thinking of like, oh well, if they let Matt Eberflus get up and speak in front of the media, then full speed ahead with Eberflus as coach as expected. And if they postpone or cancel that press conference or whatever, then maybe his job isn't so safe. But he has the press conference. He's asked, hey, do you think you're going to be coaching the next game? He says, yes, I'm confident I'll be coaching this Bears next game against the San Francisco 49ers. And not but a couple hours later, the big hammer drops and Matt Eberflus is out as Bears head coach for the first time, again, in over 100 years. And a lot of those 100 years had a lot of bad seasons, and never until this point have the McCaskey families agreed to fire a head coach in season. And that's where I'm still a little bit in disbelief about it. Like, this is the time, and it's clear that there was a struggle within the front office as far as when and where and how to make this coaching change. But somehow, some way, Ryan Poles, Ian Cunningham, Kevin Warren, etc., were able to convince George McCaskey and the board that this was the decision that was going to be in the best interest of the franchise. Because you can understand why, George and the McCaskies don't want to ever make an in-season head coaching change, right? Like, that's what bad teams do. That's what unstable organizations do, is fire a coach mid-season, and it sends a message to future coaches that, hey, we're not even going to give you to the end of a year to figure things out, but you got to produce right away, or else you don't get that long of a leash as more stable, consistent franchises from year to year. But I think the chorus of opposition became loud and steady enough when it's your team president and your general manager and your assistant general manager and your entire fan base and what it appears to be some players in the locker room. There seemed to be a blow up with Jalen Johnson. There's obviously a damaged relationship with Jaquan Brisker. Clearly leaders of this football team, veteran leaders of this football team, were fed up with the head coach. And you were really running out of people standing up to defend Matt Eberflus. And so at some point, it comes back to the McCaskey saying, do you want to continue like this where no one is happy with the head coach, or do you make a change for the first time ever? It's been reported that Ryan Poles wanted to fire Matt Eberflus earlier this season, as early as the Patriots game, a loss to New England there. And this comes not long after Ryan Poles had just stood by Matt Eberflus at his press conference at the end of last offseason saying, this is the guy we believe in to support Caleb Williams. And all of a sudden, that has changed. And now everyone's saying, okay, well, then what does that mean for Ryan Poles? Is that a big blemish on him? It is. And we'll talk about Ryan Poles a little bit more in a little bit here. But I'm just stunned that, like, this 4-8 Chicago Bears team was the one that George could be convinced on. Because you have to imagine, Ryan, the previous general manager, so Ryan Pace, and I guess Jerry Angelo wasn't there for Mark Trestman, but when you think about previous Bears head coaches that ended up getting fired, those general managers were probably pushing for the ownership to make a coaching change then. I mean, you look back, you think about maybe not as much Matt Nagy, because Ryan Pace probably knew he was going to be gone with Matt Nagy, but Ryan Pace certainly pushing for John Fox to be fired during that 2017 season, as he's watching his his first-round quarterback get ruined by a bad head coach. And the Bears sat through a bad 2017 season with John Fox, where they finished 5-11. At one point, they were 3-9 on a 5-game losing streak. They were failing around their rookie quarterback, who was struggling a little bit. They had lost at the end of that 5-game losing streak. They just lost to a 2-10 San Francisco 49ers team. It was just their second win of the season. It was a pretty embarrassing moment. But then McCaskey said, "No, we'll just finish out the year and ride this out." Or you think back to Mark Trestman in 2014, finishes 5-11, but halfway through that season, they lose a game to the Patriots where they gave up 51 points. Then they have a bye week, and they come out of the bye week and give up 55 points to the Green Bay Packers in one of the most embarrassing division losses the Bears have had in the last 20 years. And they sat through that. Or you can go back to the end of the Wannstedt era in 1998. They went, 4-12 in 1997 and 4-12 again in 98. And that 98 season, they lost 6 in a row and were at 3-11. They lost to the Vikings and the Packers divisional game losses. And they said no. And obviously that wasn't George McCaskey in 98. I know George didn't take over, but the McCaskey family and Bears ownership in 100 years has never made that decision to fire a coach in season like this until now, until Matt Eberflus. And that's a credit, I think, to Poles and Warren for being convincing. It's probably also a credit to Matt Eberflus for having such a catastrophic embarrassment at an end of a game that was so directly on him and reflected the issues in a way that's impossible to ignore or brush under the rug. The way that, okay, Trestman, you could blame some defenses, and John Fox, you could say it wasn't a very good roster, and X, Y, you could make excuses for other guys, but Matt Eberflus, the excuses really, really started running out. I also think the composition of the team as it stands right now also has a lot to do with why now they decided to make this change with this coach as opposed to previous coaches. And I think the bigger factors for me might come down to Caleb Williams and also Thomas Brown, who I think both of them played a really big part in the McCaskies making this head coaching change in season. We'll explore what their presence makes different now than previous examples next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at the IceShaker. I know if you're like me, Your holiday shopping list is far from complete, and I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fan in your life. Perhaps you heard of IceShakers. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and they'll make the ideal gift. Created by and used by the Gronkowski brothers, IceShakers has sold over 1 million bottles, and they've changed the game with workout bottles, so this is the gift you've been looking for. You can go to IceShaker.com and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% off your order. These IceShaker cups are great because they will hold ice for over 30 hours. And they've got a patented twist-in agitator that breaks up powders, protein powders or whatever kind of shakes you want to make, but it's silent when you shake it instead of the annoying metal balls and the other shaker cups. Like, this is a super easy to use product that works really, really well. Order your team branded bottles today at IceShaker.com and use our code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. IceShakers. Show your support for your teams with the best branded workout bottles on the market. IceShakers. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp provides online therapy that's here to help you be your best self, especially during this holiday season. Sometimes it can be great to bring you closer to family members, and for some people, the holidays are a tough time. And therapy is a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. I do online therapy, and it's a really important part of my own personal mental health regimen. That's why I recommend using BetterHelp. Because if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist, but you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. The Chicago Bears decided they needed better help at the head coaching position. And they've never done that before, but I think the circumstances of this team right now played a lot into it. That this is not just any rookie first-round pick quarterback, but a number one overall pick quarterback who is also playing well in spite of his head coach. And you have then direct evidence 3 weeks in a row of your head coach holding that quarterback back from winning. And at the same time, you have direct evidence of the guy you promoted to be offensive coordinator directly aiding and helping that quarterback look like a number one overall pick and giving you a clear direction and out if you decided to move on from Matt Eberflus. And I think those dynamics are particularly the most unique to the Eberflus situation that weren't there under previous bad Bears head coaches that gave ownership and the front office some confidence and peace of mind to be able to make this decision for the first time in franchise history. If you think about it, Thomas Brown showing such a different style of leadership on offense in such a contrast to what they had been getting from Matt Eberflus made this easier. It sort of greased the wheels. And I can't help but wonder a little bit if firing Shane Waldron is what directly led to Matt Eberflus being fired here. That if he had kept Shane Waldron in, that maybe he could have survived as well. Because you wouldn't have the contrast staring you in the face, staring the players in the face, staring the front office in the face, and ownership in the face of, hey, this coaching staff has been seriously lacking in leadership, accountability, and transparency. And all of a sudden, you have this new offensive coordinator who is showing you leadership, communication, transparency, and accountability in a way that was sorely missing and is very different from the head coach. And all of a sudden, you have an offensive coordinator who's doing a better job at the leadership aspects of head coaching just for the offense than the head coach himself. And it makes it a pretty obvious need and an obvious path for change for the team because you have Thomas Brown right there. That maybe they feel like, okay, well, Eric Washington just got here and is just kind of filling in as Eberflus's second voice, but he's the defensive coordinator. He's just trying to be another Eberflus in the room when Eberflus is busy doing head coaching stuff. So like if you fired Matt Eberflus and promoted Eric Washington, I'm sure Eric Washington has a different communication style, and obviously it's not that they're the exact same person, but maybe the difference isn't stark enough in the mind of ownership. Same thing with Richard Hightower, the special teams coordinator. Again, like I think he's a better communicator. I think there's things about both of those coaches that would make them better choices than just sticking with Matt Eberflus, but maybe ownership says, well, okay, like what's the big difference at that point? Why bother making a change? We can just ride it out with this and make the firing in the offseason. But Thomas Brown provided such a different approach and voice and wasn't afraid to say, okay, I'm the offensive coordinator now. Okay, we're going to do things a lot differently than the last guy was doing. And the last guy was kind of following the lead of the head coach. Like Thomas Brown represented a little bit more of like an outsider voice, even though he had been there the whole time, but he had been a little more subdued, a little more silenced, a little more off to the side. But once he was able to get in front of the offense, in front of the room, he showed everyone like, hey, here's how some leadership looks like. And then the whole offense is like, whoa, that's what we've been looking for. And then they all turn to the head coach and go, wait a minute, we're not getting it from him, but we are getting it from Thomas Brown, and that just sort of sows the seeds here of discontent. Whereas if Shane Waldron was still the offensive coordinator, again, like it's your coordinators were kind of following suit of your head coach in terms of communication and how they're leading the team and stuff. And okay, you fire Eberflus, and then okay, same question. Okay, you're not promoting Waldron because the offense has been bad, so you're promoting Eric Washington, you're promoting special teams coordinator. Like they're just. It wasn't as natural of a change where you would notice the change, right? If you fire Eberflus with Waldron still here, you're making a change for the sake of a change, and none of the guys were really like going to change much for your team. It's just a new guy at the head, but it's you cut the head off it's like a three-headed snake, right? You cut one off, but you still got the other two still there. Whereas when Thomas Brown takes over, he gets a chance to like actually try and quickly instill a slightly different culture over the final 5 weeks of this season. And he also is the guy who is most directly responsible for the success of your number one overall pick quarterback. And that's where I think it's another different factor in the eyes of the front office than previous situations where, you had Mitch Trubisky under John Fox with a lame duck head coach in there. You had Justin Fields under Matt Nagy with a lame duck head coach in there. But I think in both the Trubisky and Justin Fields cases, there wasn't as much pressure on them to be great instantly. They both started as backups and were brought along a little bit more slowly, and then the expectations were a lot lower when they did take the field because Trubisky and Fields were put out there sooner than the team wanted to. The plan was to sit them their whole rookie seasons. That wasn't the case. There were offensive issues, and they both kind of struggled in their rookie seasons. They've had flashes that made you feel like they could do some good things and would still be good quarterbacks, but they weren't thriving. They were getting by. And so maybe you felt like, what's the difference if you just kind of finish out the season like this and then really hit it harder in year two? But with Caleb Williams, you have a quarterback who certainly has struggled this season, but in the last 3 games with Thomas Brown has really taken off again and is looking better than any rookie Bears quarterback we've seen in my lifetime and maybe in the history of the franchise, right? Is looking the part as a number one overall pick quarterback and a guy that ownership knows, like the franchise is dependent on Caleb Williams' success. Number one overall pick quarterback with all of the hype and expectations and talent that he has. Like this is just a slight notch above even a number 2 overall pick in Mitch Trubisky or a number 11 overall pick in Justin Fields, 10 or 11. I forget which one he was. Like Caleb Williams, the stakes were just a little bit higher with all that they've invested in him as a decision for a franchise. And certainly then for Ryan Poles, he can kind of point to his job security being tied to Caleb Williams as well, saying, hey, like if you're going to keep me around, then I got to protect myself by protecting this quarterback. And so we got to get this coach out of here, as opposed to like, again, Ryan Pace with Fields and stuff kind of knew that he might be on the way out with Nagy being on the way out. And then, before that with Mitch Trubisky, like it was a lot of more of a mess there, as opposed to like Poles says, Caleb Williams, we've got the quarterback. We just need the coach. We can figure this out and can be more convincing. And ownership says, all right, we'll do it. For the first time in franchise history. But that puts everything back on that general manager, whose job is definitely tied to Caleb Williams and will definitely be tied to this next head coach. It's Ryan Poles' last chance. And we got to look at what that means for the future of this team next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. And FanDuel wants to help you tackle all the NFL action because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So if you want to bet on the fired head coach bump lifting the Bears against the San Francisco 49ers, a $5 bet on that game or any other game, any other sport across all of FanDuel, if you get that $5 bet correct on your first bet, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to also place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of a game and you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get that $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Locked On Bears is also brought to you by Game Time, the best way to get tickets for all of your favorite live events. I have the Game Time app on my phone, and I use it all the time. Whether I'm going to a Bears game or I get my concert tickets on Game Time, theater shows, comedians, you name it, they've got all your live events on Game Time. I love the app because you can see the view from your seat of the tickets you're purchasing before you buy the tickets, so you know exactly what you're getting with your ticket purchase, and you can turn on all-in pricing, so you know exactly how much you're going to pay. There aren't any added fees at the end of the checkout process. You know, my ticket's going to cost me this much by the time I'm paying for it, and you don't get to the end and realize, oh my God, all these surprise hidden costs make it cost way more than you thought. None of that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem that code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. The time is now for Ryan Poles. It's your job on the line. By all accounts, Ryan Poles' job is safe for now. Like, Ryan Poles is not going to get fired at the end of this season. Ryan Poles will be the general manager who picks the next head coach of the Chicago Bears and makes all the free agency and trade decisions here moving forward. He's sticking around for now. But it's abundantly clear that this will be the last head coach Ryan Poles picks as Bears general manager. I mean, I suppose I should caveat that by saying, okay, if he picks a good head coach and that head coach is successful for 10 years and then retires, then Ryan Poles is still general manager. Like, okay, there's a best case scenario where Poles gets to pick another coach, but you get what I mean. If this next coach pick from Ryan Poles gets fired, Ryan Poles will also be fired. He will not survive another fired head coach after this one. So this is it. He knows that his job is tied to this head coach because his job is tied to Caleb Williams' success as well. And then this head coach will be the biggest determining factor in Caleb Williams' success because this head coach will pick the offensive coordinator. This head coach may be the offensive coordinator themselves or the offensive play caller themselves and directly shape the #1 overall pick quarterback. And getting that right is the biggest key to Ryan Poles' job and to this long-term success of the franchise. Certainly Kevin Warren, the team president, will be directly, heavily involved in the next head coaching search. I don't think Kevin Warren's job security, though, is tied to Ryan Poles because Kevin Warren didn't hire Ryan Poles. Ryan Poles was here first. Kevin Warren came in afterwards. So certainly his seat is as safe and clean as any in the organization. His is as safe as George McCaskey at this point, I think. But nonetheless, Warren and Poles are going to be involved in the Eberflus decision. And Warren Poles will be involved in the next decision for head coach because Warren wasn't involved in the Eberflus decision. So this is going to be a different process with Kevin Warren. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a better process with Kevin Warren. I mean, certainly we hope for better from Kevin Warren than what we were getting with Ted Phillips, et cetera. But like, I'm not perfectly convinced that every Kevin Warren decision is going to be the right one. But he has a longer leash and more benefit of the doubt than management that's been here for 20 years and continues to make poor decisions over and over and over again. And I can feel some Bears fans not satisfied with Ryan Poles keeping his job, saying, hey, you picked Matt Eberflus. You then doubled down on Matt Eberflus last offseason when you could have fired him and you could have hired, Jim Harbaugh or, it was any of the other head coaching candidates last year. I think Harbaugh was the one that a lot of people were, in love with as an option there. Certainly Vrabel was an option at the time, although he is still an option here. They interviewed Cliff Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator, didn't make that decision. Dan Quinn goes to the Commanders. Like, that was an option for this team. Raheem Morris to the Falcons. I mean, there were different options the Bears could have considered. Even Ben Johnson at the time last year, that he apparently wanted to be here, and the Bears didn't pull the trigger and said, no, we're sticking with Matt Eberflus. We believe this guy. Why should we bring back the general manager that doubled down on Matt Eberflus? And I understand that completely, and think it's probably the biggest blunder on Ryan Poles' resume. Like, yes, he messed up the Chase Claypool trade. He messed up signing the Nate Davis contract has been really bad. Ryan Poles has made plenty of mistakes as a general manager. Getting the head coach wrong has definitely been the most important one. But I give Ryan Poles credit for admitting the mistake and not going down with the Matt Eberflus ship and not sticking to him and saying, no, I still think he could feel this out. Because, there's a path here where the Bears don't fire Matt Eberflus right now, and maybe they win a couple more games and maybe even try and bring him back next year. And you can hear them saying, hey, we're really close. We're making good progress. We just need that one more year to run it back, because now we got Thomas Brown as the OC and the defense is still this and that. And like, the fact that they fired him midseason is both a reflection that Ryan Poles messed up by keeping him, but also a positive reflection that this general manager is not afraid to admit his mistakes and say, hey, I got it wrong. I got that one wrong. I'm not going to have such a big ego that I'm going to stand by my mistakes and try and convince you that, no, you're wrong and I'm actually right about this thing that's clearly wrong. That's something Ryan Poles has generally been pretty good at. He cut Nate Davis this season and admitted, hey, we were wrong there. He got rid of Chase Claypool and admitted, hey, we were wrong there. And yes, you want a general manager who doesn't make the mistakes in the first place, but show me the general manager who hasn't made any mistakes. Show me the general manager who hasn't had a bad trade, a general manager who hasn't made a incorrect free agent signing. Certainly, you can show me general managers that haven't made a bad head coaching decision, and that's why it's the bigger one here. But I do think Ryan Poles deserves another shot here. I think he's done well enough as a talent evaluator and building this roster that he deserves another shot at this. He has acquired a great quarterback for this team. He has given you good skill talent. He has not done enough on the offensive line, but finds a guy like Darnell Wright, who wasn't the consensus top tackle at that spot at that time. He took a shot on Wright, and Darnell Wright has played pretty well. Braxton Jones has been okay. I mean, we don't need to go through Ryan Poles' whole resume, but Montez Sweat was a good trade. He's found Javon Dexter has been so far a pretty good draft pick on the defensive line. The linebackers have been fine. The cornerback, the secondary has been great. And most of those are Ryan Poles draft picks or Ryan Poles free agent signing in Kevin Byard or Ryan Poles contract extension in Jalen Johnson. Like, he has made a number of good decisions on this roster, in addition to bad ones that tell me like his hit rate among GMs feels like it's right on track. He's not the best GM in the NFL. He's far from the worst GM in the NFL, though. I think there are a lot of other teams that look at their rosters and look at the Bears roster and go, man, I wish we had that general manager building our roster. Maybe you didn't want that general manager picking your head coach, and that's valid. And I'm not here to say, I can't give you a reason why this time Ryan Poles will pick the right head coach. Maybe he won't. I don't know, but I think given that he's generally done well enough with roster building, I think he can have a second shot at head coach. He's had one chance to pick a head coach and picked wrong. He's 0 for 1 on that. But it's not like he's had 10 chances and gotten 10 wrong. You know what I mean? If he gets the next one right, he can at best be batting 50%. You know what I mean? It's a small sample size when you pick a head coach. You could say he made 2 decisions wrong by picking Eberflus the first time and then bringing him back last year. And I'll grant you that. Like, yes, he has not evaluated properly the job of the head coach. But I still think he does well enough with the roster. And it's hard to know if a new coach is going to be a good head coach or not. A first-time head coach, it's hard to know if any head coach is going to come into your organization and fit or come into your organization and not fit. And so it's really easy for us to say, no, get a new general manager in here to pick a new coach. But that new general manager might not build the roster as well as Ryan Poles is. And if you know Ryan Poles is at least decent at that, then I give him another shot at taking a head coach and at least having some stability on that side of the organization instead of turning over GMs as frequently as you're turning over head coaches right now. That all the turnover needs to end, and it ends by getting the right people in place. And I don't think we know for sure that Ryan Poles is the wrong person. We don't know that he's the right person, but we don't know for sure that he's the wrong person, the way that we knew for sure Matt Eberflus is the wrong person. And that's where we forge ahead with Thomas Brown as interim head coach, getting ready for the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. Yeah, there's a football game. There's still 5 more football games we got to get back to. So we'll turn our attention to some real football here in the coming days here in the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We still got some more coaching talk to do this week before we'll get to crossover Thursday with Brian Peacock from Locked On 49ers. But you can be sure that each and every day we'll give you another opportunity to bear down.